welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Greg, a behavior analyst, designs a timeout procedure to decrease a child's aggressive behavior. Greg ensures that the child has access to reinforcement for appropriate behaviors immediately after the timeout ends. Additionally, Greg monitors for any signs of emotional distress or increases in other problem behaviors during the intervention. What is the most likely reason for Greg taking these additional steps? Let's think about what Greg is doing first before we think about the steps. Greg is using timeout to decrease aggression. Greg is using punishment. And with punishment, we've got to be aware of possible side effects. So Greg is taking these additional steps, such as using a reinforcement approach in conjunction with punishment, right? We shouldn't use punishment alone. He's also looking for any emotional reactions or increases in other issues due to the punishment. Now, why is Greg taking all these additional steps using this timeout procedure? For what purpose would Greg want to cover all his bases, so to speak, if he's using timeout? A, to increase the intensity of the punishment procedure. Well, none of the additional steps Greg took had anything to do necessarily with the intensity of the punishment. B, to ensure the punishment is implemented consistently. Again, Greg is not taking steps necessarily focused on the fidelity of punishment. He's allowing reinforcement, and he's monitoring the client. C, to mitigate possible unwanted effects of the punishment procedure. If we think about our task list, there's an item that says you want to plan for and think about unwanted effects of reinforcement, extinction, and punishment. And punishment can lead to emotional responses. It can lead to increase in other problem behaviors. And we want to have that reinforcement available for punishment. So Greg is trying to mitigate unwanted effects of punishment through the additional steps. And then D, to replace punishment with reinforcement strategies entirely. Well, nowhere is that indicated where Greg is trying to get rid of punishment altogether. So we shouldn't just assume these things. Our answer here is C, to mitigate possible unwanted effects of the punishment procedure. Notice that we read all the answer choices, and we're going to do that every single time. A behavior analyst is training a group of staff members to implement a behavior intervention plan correctly. The analyst tracks the amount of time it takes each staff member to complete the training and implement the plan with 90% accuracy. The analyst uses this information to determine how quickly the staff can become competent with the intervention. What measure of efficiency is represented in determining how quickly the staff becomes competent? With the 6th edition, we have these measures of efficiency, and those are trials to criterion, training duration, and cost-benefit analyses. Trials to criterion involves figuring out how long it takes to master something, right? And so think about the analyst tracking the amount of time it takes the staff members to get to 90% accuracy. That is close to trials to criterion. How long or how many trials does it take? The question is asking, though, how quickly the staff becomes competent. The analyst wants to determine how quickly the staff becomes competent. So when we're thinking about how quickly we can be effective, we're thinking about training duration. So this is a difficult question because you've got to read carefully. You've got to know what the question is asking and understand the difference between trials to criterion and training duration. For instance, just because a staff member reaches 90%, they might have achieved trials to criterion, but are they competent? Training duration is going to help the staff get to actual competence. When we talk about cost-benefit analyses, we're comparing things as far as how much resources or money or time it would take versus the, let's say, effectiveness or the outcomes. We're analyzing the cost of an intervention, so to speak, versus the perceived benefits. We're not running a cost-benefit here. We're just looking at this singular intervention. And then D, inter-response time is not a measure of efficiency. That's just one of our measurements that should not be even considered in this particular question. The measure of efficiency being used here is training duration. How quickly the staff becomes competent is the duration it takes to train. A sales manager wants to track how many phone calls his employees are making a day to customers. Sales manager is not always in the office to observe his employees, so instead, he just looks at the final numbers at the end of the day. This most reflects what type of measurement by the sales manager. Easy measurement question. When you get an easy question, we're not going to overthink it. Now, you can overthink this question because we're looking at measurement, right? Well, let's first look at the sales manager wanting to track how many phone calls. That right there indicates some sort of frequency count. But what is the sales manager doing? He is not in the office observing the employees. So he can't be taking this direct frequency continuous measurement. He's just looking at the product, right? The final numbers. The sales manager is using a permanent product. Who's ever tracking the phone calls, the frequency is using frequency. The question wants to know about the sales manager, though. The sales manager is not watching these employees. He's just looking at the outcome. And when we just measure the outcome without necessarily looking at the behavior, we're measuring the permanent product. See, rate, it's not clear if they're turning this frequency count into rate. So C, it's not fit and is not what the sales manager is using. And then D, interval recording. Interval recording, 1 is discontinuous, and 2, there's no indication of a partial or whole interval measurement occurring. The sales manager specifically is using what we would consider permanent product measurement. A new behavior technician reports feeling uncertain about their responsibilities after several weeks on the job. The supervising behavior analyst observes that there is a lack of clarity in behavior plans and treatment plans and inconsistent communication among the team. Which of the following strategies should the supervisor implement first? So we're thinking about supervision here, right? And supervising in an effective manner. The question wants to know what strategy should be tried first. What do we know so far? We know this technician is uncertain about responsibilities. The supervisor sees there is no clarity in plans and treatment plans, and there's inconsistent communication. So a bunch of different issues going on all at once. What should the supervisor do first? A, schedule regular meetings with the behavior technician and clarify assignments. Yes, that addresses everything. That addresses communication, it addresses the clarity. Now there are regular meetings on the books. That is the first thing we need to do. We need to start communicating with our supervisees. Don't avoid direct communication with supervisees. Encourage direct communication. What about B? Simplify treatment plans and behavior plans. Well, it's obviously not as easy as that, right? Behavior plans or treatment plans are the result of assessments and time and effort. We can't just go in and simplify them because of a lack of clarity, maybe just for this technician. So B is not what we should do first. C, assign a more experienced technician to help the struggling technician. That might be something useful as maybe a mentorship program, but the supervisor needs to address it initially before passing it off to someone else, especially a technician. D, allow time for the technician to resolve their issues independently. We don't want to wait and see, especially if this technician is already working. They're on the job. We don't want to wait and see what happens. They might be with clients. They might be with stakeholders. We don't know. Waiting and seeing is rarely the right strategy. The strategy we do want to use first is schedule regular meetings with the behavior technician and clarify assignments. During session, a behavior technician records the frequency of a client's hand-raising behavior on a data sheet. Following the session, the technician then updates the behavior graph to reflect the most recent session data. What is the primary purpose of updating graphs consistently in this manner? Another easy question. Let's trust our prep, answer it, and move on. Why do we update graphs? Now, most of you probably are going to use an automated system, right, through an app or software where you just enter the data, it graphs for you. That's a great thing about our modern technology. It does it for us. But the question still stands. What's the purpose of these graphs? Why would we want a behavior technician to take this frequency data and then update that graph? Why would we make this graph and have all these great data points for each session? Well, think about what we just drew. We've got this beautiful trend line that we can quickly look at and analyze using visual analyses. So think about A, to ensure that the client's caregivers have access to all session details. The graph is not going to give you in-depth details about session. It's not what the purpose is, right? That's not describing session. That's not the reason we graph. B, to visually analyze trends and changes in the client's progress over time. Yes, don't overthink this. That's why we graph. Visual analysis, look at trends, look at progress quickly and efficiently. C, to identify specific times when the behavior occurs most often. This type of graph, this frequency chart, is not necessarily going to tell you when the behavior is occurring. That's much more likely to be a scatter plot. And since we're not talking scatter plots necessarily, we're just graphing it, C does not fit. And D, to prepare for potential changes in the behavior plan. Well, maybe, right? But that's not the primary reason we do this. First, we want to analyze. Then we can think about behavior plan. The primary purpose is to visually analyze trends and changes in the client's progress over time. Thanks for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let me know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.